Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. I'm Julie, your host, and I'm so delighted you could join us this week. My intention in doing this show is to provide information, insight, and comfort to people all around the world by helping to answer life's unanswerable questions. And I have such a treat for you this week. Michelle Oravitz is with us. Hi, Michelle. Welcome.
Hi, Julie. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. She is one of my favorite people on the planet, and she's an angelic attendant training grad. She's part of the AAT community, and she is a fertility specialist. So she combines woo-woo with her work as an acupuncturist. And so I asked her to join us this week so she could tell all of us about the work that she does. And you're going to find that she's just really a remarkable woman, and you'll adore her as much as I do once you get to know her a little bit. So Michelle, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much, Julie, for having me. And the feeling is mutual. I adore you as well. And this is awesome.
Well, acupuncture is specializing in fertility health. How's that work?
Okay, so basically, just like anything, when you're doing natural medicine, you can decide to specialize and start working on like specific things. And I was always called to fertility. And I think that part of it was that I was always an artist and I always used to paint. And I feel like I channel a woman through my paintings. And I feel like this energy of this fertility goddess, Guan Yin, is something that seems to repeat in my life. And I really do believe that she comes through not only in my paintings, but also in my work with women.
Interesting. Is she an Asian goddess?
Yeah, so she's an Asian, almost like a female Buddha, but I do believe that she is repeated through different cultures. So I feel like she comes out as Mother Mary. Depending on the different culture, it's kind of like that female, loving, compassion, feminine energy.
Okay, well, that makes sense. And I know there's lots of probably Isis and Mother
and
Mary.
She's also, goddess of fertility as well.
Right. Interesting. Well, you are an architect to start out. How does one go from being an architect to being an acupuncturist specializing in fertility?
So I started out as a patient myself. I was an architect. It didn't end up being quite what I imagined it to be. It wasn't as creative. And I didn't feel, I think really my calling was to work with people. And I didn't feel like I had the same kind of meaning that I was craving through architecture. I felt like most of the time I was sitting in an office, seeing the same few people every day, who, if I liked them, the job was amazing. And if I was okay, it wasn't anything that special, but that wasn't enough for me to really be passionate about a career. So I started out as a patient doing acupuncture. And the first time I went, I was amazed, and it actually alleviated my own reproductive symptoms, which was not getting my period for 3 months in a row, many times, 3 months, 2 months, completely irregular. And no doctor, Western medicine doctor, was able to help besides just giving me the birth control pill. And I was seeking answers and I wasn't getting it. I knew that it was out there somewhere, and I eventually found it in acupuncture, completely resolved. And I also felt an amazing sense of vitality in my like well-being, my life, my physical body, but also my spirit. I felt a lot more alive.
Well, did you come from a family that used natural medicine versus what we consider to be Western medicine? Or was this just a total lark that you went to an acupuncturist kind of as a last resort to help with your infertility issues?
Well, we didn't have necessarily natural medicine, but interestingly enough, my grandmother was really into natural health, natural medicine. She used to read books, actually Egyptian books, about medicine, natural medicine, and how honey has certain benefits for the body, and like just natural. Like she used to tell me, if you eat what we're intended to eat from the earth, like really, really healthy food, you'll never get sick if you know what to eat. And she used to have a raw garlic every day, and she was all about natural medicine. And I was very intrigued by it. And I really was so interested in everything she taught me. And I was really curious to find my own, because I think when I was younger, they didn't have as many books on natural medicine. It started happening a little bit later where it was for the layperson and they had natural remedy books. So when it started coming out, I was very intrigued. So I always had the interest, but it wasn't something I went straight to school for.
How did she know that stuff? Just from her culture? Where did she live? Where was she from? How did
she was from Iraq, and so she was able to get access to books, I guess, it was in Arabic, written in Arabic from Egyptian books. So we're, Jewish from Iraq, very small culture within, but she was able to understand and access and read books. I guess it was mostly Egyptian medicine, which is just fascinating. I mean, it's just so interesting.
Well, don't you find that so many of the ancient cultures did have amazing remedies that have been brushed aside by our, quote, Western medicine in this day and age? And it's starting to come back because the Western medicine doesn't have the answer for everything. Certainly there's a place for it. And certainly it's part of the healing equation. But
Yes.
I believe that there are many methodologies when combined, we can really move forward from a medical perspective, and not just one way is the only way. I mean, certainly back to the Salem witch trials, a lot of those women were natural healers and using herbs and energy and things like that. And they got burned at the stake, for heaven's sake.
I know. Crazy. But you know what it is? It's a spectrum, right? So a lot of times Western medicine is really good for things like trauma or things that are really, really severe. So that's a spectrum, but you can't use those things for things that are more subtle occurring in your body. And Eastern medicine, we actually don't need, we can see things before they actually appear in labs. So for example, we can almost detect like blood deficiency before it becomes anemia, and it's detected by labs. So somebody can be blood deficient, which means they have a deficiency similar to anemia through the blood, but they're not yet at the point where it's so severe that it actually shows up and is a lot more symptomatic. So we look at like the subtleties, and when we're able to balance those, the body actually is able to heal itself. So we really assist the body in its own self-healing.
I know you're married to a physician, so I can only imagine the pillow talk between the two of you, as far as he's Western medicine, you're Eastern medicine. Do you find that he has incorporated some of your Eastern medicine ideas into his practice in his Western medicine?
Not necessarily into his practice, but he's very open-minded. The reason being is because he's an emergency medicine doctor, and there's nothing Eastern about that.
Yeah, really.
It does not work, because of course, he's dealing with trauma. So it's kind of interesting because that's the creme de la creme of Western medicine, and that's really what he does. So it's more severe cases, people coming in, losing blood and, infections and what have you.
He's saving lives and you're helping to create lives.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah,
but we do have conversations, and it's actually very interesting because sometimes he'll help me. He'll mention certain conditions or certain things that he's seen that are a little more severe, but it's obviously something that is interesting to me and actually helped me when I was going to school, because I was able to understand the body a little better because he would explain it to me from a Western medicine perspective. And he is very open to my perspective as well, especially when it comes to things that he's going through in his own life, like lower back pain or whatever it is, or just like digestion. So I can help him with that because it's a little more subtle. We don't have to work with major medicine. We work with like herbs and also diet.
Mm-hmm. And honey.
Honey, don't forget the honey. Honey's amazing.
Yeah, I've heard about the honey, that you want to always use local honey because it has the pollen from the local plants, especially if somebody has allergies.
That's interesting. No, I haven't heard that. That's I didn't know about that, the local honey, because of the local plants.
I've heard that a lot for people that suffer with seasonal allergies, especially because when you use the honey from the local honeybees, and they've, of course, gathered the pollen from the plants that are in the area, and then you build up, I don't know, whatever it is, I don't know,
immunity,
immunity or tolerance, and it doesn't end up being a stimulant to the immune system, because the immune system has gotten it in gradual doses. And who doesn't love honey?
Honey's amazing.
It's about as good as it gets. Well, back to the architecture side of your life. That, in my mind, requires a linear thinker to be able to do architecture, for heaven's sakes, because
in some way,
well, you're designing buildings to scale, and you have parameters that you have to use, and they have to be structurally sound. I know you bring in the engineers to help with that part of the project, but certainly you have to have a general understanding, and you have to be very precise in what you're designing. Did you do primarily residential or commercial?
Both. But the thing is, I didn't actually design anything yet, because typically that's either the presidents of the company, if it's a big company, or the owner most of the time. And I was basically, I haven't gotten even to that level before I decided to change careers.
Okay. All right. Well, back to it takes a linear mind to be able to do it, to study it, to graduate from it, and all of that. Does acupuncture as well require a linear mind?
I think were you going to ask more? Or?
No, that's my first part of the question. And then my second part of the question is, explain to us about acupuncture. I think most people have heard the term and they know it involves needles in some way, but I don't think most people, at least, especially in America, understand acupuncture and how it works and how long it's been around and how useful it is and all of that. So I'd love for you to answer the question about the linear thinking, and then just kind of give us an overview of acupuncture in general and how it works.
So Chinese medicine is so intricate. And if you think about it, it's almost like a web. Actually, it's interesting because there's a book called The Web That Has No Weaver. So if anybody's interested in learning more, it's a wonderful book for a beginner, somebody who really wants to learn about it and is curious. It really describes it in a beautiful way, and it shows every aspect of what it is, but in a way that people can grasp if they've never heard of it before. But it really is like a web. So if you think about a web, it's very linear and it has a formula, but at the same time, it becomes abstract because there's so many different facets to it. And you start to almost play it like an instrument with many different tones. So you learn the skill, and that could be very linear to understand the skill and to memorize the points and to memorize the formulas of the herbs and things like that. But then once you start to practice it and you kind of have that language in your mind, then you can start to become almost a composer, or somebody who starts to see almost the different dimensions. And that always just comes with time. It's not something that happens right away. You start to have a feeling for it. But the amazing thing with acupuncture is it's hard to really go wrong because people are still getting benefit, which is just from having the needles, which is why when people do studies and research on it, and if they're using sham acupuncture, which isn't exactly the specific points, people are still getting benefits. So you can't really contrast and compare people who are receiving sham acupuncture to actual acupuncture, because they're still getting benefit having the needles in there, because it does kind of create a response in the body.
Sham as in fake acupuncture, or is that a technique?
It's acupuncture that's fake, meaning like it's not an exact points. So it's not in the exact points, and there is a subtle difference, but they're still getting benefit because with acupuncture, there's something called Ashi points, or sometimes you put points in certain areas that are not specifically designated as points, if that makes sense.
Okay, so back to sham though. Is sham like it's fake, like it's a hoax, or is it a technique?
No, they're still receiving needles and acupuncture, but it's just not in points, in specific points that we learn.
So it would be like a different type of acupuncture.
No, it's regular acupuncture that they do, but they put the points in the wrong place.
Okay. So they're just not doing it right.
Kind of randomly. Yeah.
Got ya. Okay. So let's back up about why do you want to put needles in somebody's body? What does that do? Let's start kind of at the beginning of how acupuncture works in general.
So I'll explain to you basically in just metaphors, because that's the easiest way to really picture it, is that our body is almost like a circuit. It's got a bunch of circuits of energy, just like a machine does, to feed and help travel or move the energy to feed the whole body. And each circuit runs through different organs. So there's different circuits for the organ. So the liver has a meridian. It's called the meridian. I'm calling it circuit, so you can kind of picture these lines that go deep in the body, and they go through the liver and deep into the body. But every so often, they come close to the surface of the skin. And when they do, those are the points, the acupuncture points. These are the points that you can actually access them. So you can be a lot more specific to what you're doing therapeutically when you do that. And you put the points in those specific areas that are a little more shallow, where the meridians are a little more shallow and closer to the skin. So by doing that and putting the needles in those specific points, you're actually accessing meridians that potentially go very deep, that go deep into the body.
So the meridians, as I'm picturing it, is kind of like the wires that run the electricity to the different rooms. And the different body parts would be where those meridians go to power those parts of the body. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes. So imagine, we have like certain outlets where they're deep, the electricities, the wires are really deep inside the walls. You can't reach them unless you go to certain areas like outlets or circuit breaker, or certain areas where they're close to the surface and we have access to them. Mm-hmm. So in Chinese medicine, those are the acupuncture points. And those are the points that you can access with either pressure, but obviously much deeper with needles.
And what happens when you stick a needle into one of those points?
Many times what you'll find is that people will actually feel something called de qi. And that's when you basically trigger a qi response in the body. You can literally feel your meridian. It'll shoot down the meridian. And it's crazy when you experience it and you picture it in your head, and then somebody shows you, because I've done that to my husband because he's very scientific. So I'm like, here, look, is that where you felt it going? And I show him where the meridian is, and he's like, oh my God, that's exactly where I felt it. So you'll almost feel like you're jump-starting a car, like you're jump-starting that meridian when you're feeling that point. And then it helps that energy to start circulating. So when you're doing that, basically we're a ball of energy and oxygen and nutrients in our bodies. When you do that, you unlock any kind of stagnation or blockages to allow that energy to flow more easily. And once that happens, the body is able to heal itself. So we don't actually do the healing, it's the body. We're just assisting the body to do its own self-healing on itself.
Well, I don't think any medical provider or doctor or surgeon or any kind of acupuncturist or acupressurist or whomever heals anybody else ever. I believe that we all help the person heal themselves. And an analogy I like to use for that is, think of a surgeon who makes an incision Or in your husband's case, when he's got somebody coming into the ER with some big old cut or laceration, what's he do? He stitches it up with suture, or he's using staples or something like that to hold it together. And then the body grows the skin back.
That's right.
Your husband's not growing the skin back for the patient. The patient's body heals that, but he's the facilitator. He's the one that's putting that skin together and maybe cleaning it out and making sure it's not infected. But it's always our body that heals itself. The work that I do, and you know from taking my class, that we're all the facilitators helping the person heal themselves. I use the analogy of, oftentimes I compare myself to a tugboat captain, and you're the ship. And I'm going to help steer you safely into port. And then you're going to take over once you're in port and heal yourself. So yeah, I agree with you on that. Okay. So when you first of all, do the needles hurt when you put them in?
Sometimes they do. Sometimes people will feel a little pinch. Sometimes if there's a lot of blockage, they're going to feel it a little bit more. Sometimes they feel nothing. Okay. Most of the time, it really doesn't hurt.
It's like a hair thin, right? It's a hair.
Super thin. Yeah.
Yeah. Super thin. So do you use different needles? Does everybody have their own set of needles, or do you just sterilize the needles after every use? Or
No. It's just like going to the doctors. They'll never use a syringe twice.
Okay.
They
so
throw
it's
it
all
out
disposable.
In the sharps. Everything is, yeah.
Okay. It's all disposable. All right. Can you tell I've never had it done? That's why I'm so fascinated.
No, people ask that question a lot, actually. It's a very common question because you don't know.
Well, and back in the day, I'm sure they did reuse the needles.
They did, of course. And it was really funny because when I first came into the place that I was going to go to school, the admissions director, he said, come in with your mom, we'll give you a free treatment. So I went in there, and so we were waiting in the waiting room, and he goes, we're just we're sterilizing the needles. We'll be right back. And my mom and I looked at each other like, what?
Yeah, that's so sure I want those in me. Yeah, but they used to sterilize all that stuff, and I was in the hospital supply industry for 30 years, so I know about all that sterilization stuff. And then, my gosh, even at the dentist, they've got autoclaves and the orthodontist.
Well, they used to do that. Yeah, you're right. I mean, they did have autoclaves and sterilized.
How does somebody get a block? Are they born with it? Does it happen in their life? How does a block originate? And then when you stick the needle into a pressure point, does it release the block? Does it take more than one time to stick the needle in to get the block to release? How's that work?
Yeah, so basically, of course, people are either born with it, because some people are born with you could be born with anything, really. But really, most of the time, what I mean by blockages is basically stagnant energy. Or stagnant blood. Sometimes stagnant blood can turn into tumors. So because it stagnates for so long, it starts to harden. So there's different it's like everything's really a spectrum. So if a person is really anxious and tight, you could literally feel their skin. In some people, they're so stressed out, I can barely get the needle in their back. It's so tight. The skin becomes resistant to anything going inside. It's hard as a rock. And you can feel the muscles too. I mean, people just get really, really tight. So imagine when you're stressed out, you've ever felt like really stressed out. And most people will say that they feel it in their upper shoulder area. They'll tighten their shoulders and tense up. So when you tense up, you're not really allowing a lot of flow to go in. You're stopping is what you're doing. And so doing that over and over and over again, it could be from just stress. It could be also from poor food and a sluggish circulation because you have too much dampness in the food. There's so many different reasons why we can kind of cause that stagnation and stop things from moving. But that's pretty much how, over time, it just becomes more and more dense in certain areas. So in that case, because of the tightness, and typically, even when I was doing hypnobirthing for when I was pregnant to prepare me for the labor, and one of the things they talked about was pain comes when there's tension. So if you actually lean into it and breathe into it rather than fight it, then you'll feel less pain.
What's
So the same thing
hypnobirthing?
happens. Oh, hypnobirthing. Okay, so it's basically you do these mantras and visualizations to open yourself up for labor, for birth, and prepare yourself. So when you have the baby, you're not really fighting against it. And the whole idea behind it is that you don't need to feel pain during labor.
Wow.
And I know it sounds crazy. Yeah, well, they show you videos in the beginning, which I think is hypnosis on its own, of women just breathing through and having babies and holding them, standing up, not looking like patients, but just women having babies and not making it a medical thing. And it's just really fascinating just about how natural it is and how our bodies know what to do. And that the more we fight it and like the mental idea of watching those shows on TLC, just watching shows and seeing the pain or the description of it, we anticipate this horrible pain, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. We could just lean into it. And the more we lean into it and allow it and not fight it, the easier it gets and the more flow we have. So it actually does reflect what hypnobirthing does for birthing, reflects very much how Chinese medicine can help allow the body to lean back and kind of allow the energy to flow more. And once it flows more, it's able to do what it needs to do. It's almost like getting the ambulance from one side of the town to the other. If there's too much congestion, too much happening, too much going on, too much chaos, it's not going to happen.
Fascinating. Well, you hear all the stories about the rice paddy worker women since the beginning of time that would squat in the field and the baby would come out and then they'd put the baby on a backpack on their shoulder and then they'd keep working, kind of a thing. And and I know when I was getting ready to have Jonathan, I remembered telling myself, okay, there are trillions of women that have done this and survived. So I can too, because the first time at the end, you're kind of like, okay, this has to get out of where to get this baby born. And do I really want to do that? And then we, the vast majority of us survive and move on. And he came so fast that I couldn't have an epidural. I wanted him to hook it up a couple weeks early, kind of be like an astronaut and have one of those lifelines, when they're walking in space or walking on the moon. I thought, can't you just hook that thing up and have it in there for a couple of weeks just in anticipation? Because I was so afraid of labor. But he came so fast, I couldn't have any drugs. And I just got up and walked for 45 minutes and then he was born.
Wow.
And I don't understand why they have women lay down. What's up with that?
Exactly. I stood up when my second one, I didn't have anything. My first one, she was sunny side up. So I did feel pain because the back of her head was against my pelvis, my sacrum, and it was really painful. And at the end, he was able to move her, but I needed an epidural. There was just no way. Second one, she was in the perfect position. And I at one point when I felt the need to push, I stood up and I had nothing. I didn't take anything. I stood up and I felt it. I was like, just releasing it. And it felt like I wanted to. And it was just really natural.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Apparently I did scream when his shoulders came out. And one of the nurses came in.
But screaming is good. You need that force to help the child out.
Well, one of the other L&D nurses came down and said, what the heck's going on down here? These other patients want to know, what are you guys doing in here? Yeah. And so, of course, I don't remember that, but that's what my husband says.
I actually do remember screaming, and I'll be honest, the reason you screamed is probably because you didn't have an epidural. You felt it. I do think that the screaming helps that pressure of pushing them out.
I guess. I don't know. Well, you see those thing. You see those sumo weightlifters, in the Olympics, and they're screaming when they're lifting, 800-pound dumbbells or something. And they're screaming. So maybe that's part of the same.
It's all chi, right? All energy
phenomenon. Yeah, when that happens. Okay, so this is fascinating about the acupuncture thing because I've never had it, so I don't know this. And I'm
Oh, you
guessing
have to get acupuncture.
I need to come down and have you stick me with needles. I'll come down.
Anytime, just let me know.
All right. So I imagine a lot of people that are listening to this or will listen to this are like me, and they haven't had an experience. They know it exists, but the thought of sticking needles in somebody's body is just kind of like, why would I do that? But I know it's very ancient. And how far back does it go in the Eastern records that they've been able to find that acupuncture and acupressure really, do they even know when it began? Do they have history that goes back that far?
Well, what they do know is at least 3,000 years ago that they know of, but lots of book burning happened and lots of material was lost. So a lot of information was lost. And even what we learn now is a fraction of what used to be.
Mm-hmm. I would imagine. And it's interesting. My guess is, my supposition is that most of the work that you do has been done for thousands of years. Maybe you've got a new spin on it, like disposable needles.
Right.
But for the most part, it's still the same techniques that have been practiced over millennia.
Yeah. And I think that that's what makes it special is that, of course, things were lost and it's probably not quite as, it's lost a little integrity over time just because things change and things get lost. But really the core message of it and understanding really, it's all about understanding what helps nature thrive because we are part of nature and how we need the duality, the yin, the yang, the sun, the moon, all the different balances that nature goes through in order to thrive. And that never goes out of style. It's not something that, when you see a lot of like new medicines coming out or new discoveries, a lot of times another discovery comes and disproves the other one. And it's very unstable. If you think about it, even though there are amazing advances as well, but it's a little more rocky. It's a little more unstable. Somebody comes and discovers one thing, another person disproves them and discovers something else. But with this, it really comes down to just such simplicity and just nature and understanding the laws of nature. And that never goes out of style. It's just as long as you're on this planet, those laws of nature are way stronger than any of our research or science or anything. It's just the observation of what is.
Back to just the fundamentals of acupuncture, if you'll humor me for another couple of minutes on this.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody comes in and they say, okay, I have a sinus. My sinus is hurt all the time. Do you put them on their back and you're sticking needles in their head? Do you have certain meridians that are not near the sinuses that you're going to access? Do you stick needles on them while they're laying on their back on the front of them and then flip them over after you're done sticking needles and you pull them out and then you stick more needles in the back? How does all that work?
So some people do both sides depending on what it is. I don't do that. I do different sides for one treatment, but you can do something called local. There's local points, and you can do local points for sinus. They're a little painful. It's right next to the folds of your nostrils. But there's really, really, really powerful points there. They really open you up. It's almost like having something spicy. You're like, oh, and it kind of, it's a little uncomfortable. You can feel it in your sinuses, almost like a wasabi, that kind of like feeling. It almost opens you up and makes you tear. And there's also points. There are also points, one on the hand, which is the command point for the face. So anything to do with the face, this point, which is not on the face, it's on the hand, can reflect the face. Now, another thing too is we do something called body mapping. So this is why sometimes what's called the sham acupuncture that we discussed before can impact somebody without them realizing it, because you can do also body mapping. So if you look at an arm, you can look at the hand and the hand can reflect the head, the wrist can reflect the neck, and then you go into like the torso, and then where I bend here is where I would bend my body. Like I'm showing you, but if people aren't seeing me, I'm bending my elbow right now, and I'm putting my hand right in the inner crease of my elbow, the opposite of my elbow, and that is where it would reflect my abdomen or the area where like my hips. So, but that's not what it only reflects. It can also reflect my leg. So it's crazy, but you basically can reflect every single part of your body and every single part of your body, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it's like the collective consciousness, we're all part of spirit as individuals, but we're part of, like, if we turned ourselves into a drop of water and dropped ourselves into the ocean, we become part of the ocean. But we still have we still are water, but we are part of the ocean as well. So yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Because I know reflexology, I've had reflexology foot massages before where they can access different meridians with different organs. Like they'll be getting a foot rub.
Very similar.
They'll, I don't know, rub a part of my foot and I'll be like, whoa, what's that? And they'll say, well, your liver's out of whack. I'll say, well, how can you tell that from my foot? And I know it's the same kind of thing. So do you ever have people that come in that just want an overall tune-up?
Yeah.
And they don't really have anything going on, and they just kind of come in periodically, maybe once a month or once a quarter or something, just to stay in alignment and stay healthy?
Absolutely. But when you do what I do, and I'm sure you probably see the same, everybody has something going on at one point or another, but it's just a varied degree. So it could be very, very, very minor. But everybody has a little like tuning that they could use. It could be whatever, it could be anything, and it could be just a little digestive, but very, very slightly, or a little sluggish, but it's not anything like too severe. So it's just very easy. You do one treatment a month if you're doing maintenance, or one every 2 weeks. And some people, it's amazing. Some people who have had really severe symptoms have come once, very few times after, and immediately had just a release and a shift. It's crazy. Very, very rare. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen.
Fascinating. Does insurance cover it usually?
It does. It does. I personally don't deal with insurance anymore. It was just too much of a headache with the high deductibles and everything, and I'm out of network. But most acupuncture, what I do personally, even people who don't take insurance can actually submit a super bill to the patient, and the patient submits it to the insurance, and they do get paid back. So yeah, insurance does cover.
Which is just fantastic. And what an accomplishment for the Acupuncture
it's wonderful,
Association, or whoever lobbied with the insurance companies to say, okay, we need to get paid for this. My daughter-in-law, Mallory, Dr. Mal, is a veterinarian. And I know, and she learned acupuncture in veterinary medicine. They taught it as part of her curriculum.
Oh, yeah.
And I have a friend who has horses.
It's amazing.
I was just with her, and they have an acupuncturist that's a vet that comes out, a vet acupuncturist, I guess is what they call themselves. And they come, I think, at least once a month, maybe every other week or something, to work on her horses.
And it works. And that's the amazing thing. When it works on animals or babies, it works. Then there's no placebo there.
Good point. I love that. All right. Well, speaking of babies, let's transition into your area of expertise, which is fertility. And when working with a couple who want to conceive, what's your normal protocol? Are these people that have been through other, perhaps IVF, or they're doing it in conjunction with IVF, or is there a typical, and what's the broad brushstroke of the couples with whom you work?
Yeah, it's there is no typical. I have ranges of imbalanced hormones, people trying to go naturally, people without any period at all, completely needing to jumpstart their period from zero, people who have too much stress, people who are doing IVF, IUI, that did a retrieval, want to help with transfer, or have done failed retrievals and want to do it again and want to work on their egg quality. So I get so many ranges of couples. Sometimes men coming in. Most of the time, it's women. It's just every once in a while the husband will come in as well, and I get very happy when I do see that, because it's just not always the case. Whether they're really busy with work or whatever it is, sometimes it's hard to get the guys in.
Do you find that it's usually women led that want to have babies? I talk to guys. My son's 29, and none of his friends or him are interested in having kids, but their wives talk about it like, okay, in 5 years or something, we'll start thinking about it. And the guys are like, yeah, whatever. Do you find that the male partners are doing it just because they know their female partners or wives want to have a baby? Is it more female led? Is that a species thing that we females have?
Well, by the time they come to me, they're both on board, that's for sure. But the women are a lot more into, like, they will not leave one stone unturned. They want to make sure they do everything. So they'll do the research, they'll figure it out. And they're like, my patients are some of the smartest women I know. They are so smart. They teach me. They're like, have you heard of this? Have you heard of that? I mean, that's like so much of what I've learned is just talking to them and what research they've done. I'm like, oh, I'll look into this. So whatever new thing came up, or from their IVF treatments, there's so many different add-ons, or, just so many different aspects, but they are just so motivated. And I really do feel that is a primal thing with women wanting babies.
I agree with that. So you just mentioned a minute ago about improving the quality of their eggs. You can do that with acupuncture? Because doesn't a woman, when she's born, have a certain number of eggs? And then can the eggs get healthier when they're in the ovaries?
So the eggs start out as tiny little follicles, and it takes them 3 months to mature. So during that maturation, that's why we always say a minimum of 3 months to really see how this is impacting you. But it takes them 3 months to mature. And as they grow and mature, if you give them the right nutrients, they will grow really healthy.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
Energetically, I scan a lot of women that are trying to conceive. Thanks to you, because I've been on your show. And so people hear me on your show, and then they schedule a consult with me. And eggs look like blonde caviar to me. And they're kind of in a clump. And then when a woman is ovulating, what it looks like to me, again, this is in my head. I'm seeing this scene in my head. It looks like a red zit. Maybe when you were a teenager, I'd call it an underground zit, where before it develops a head, and those are the ones that hurt the most, where it's like an underground zit. And then that's where the egg pops out. That's when they ovulate. That's what it looks like to me. Is that what it really looks like?
Yep.
Okay.
So the follicle is basically the eggs are in the middle. It's surrounded by fluid, and then it goes, it has like a membrane around. And then what happens is during ovulation, that egg shoots out, and the remaining is called the corpus luteum. And that actually produces progesterone. And that's why when they check progesterone after ovulation, it shows or proves that they ovulated that month. Okay.
All right. That makes sense. Well, and then the other thing that's so interesting is when I am working with moms who sometimes I'll see ovaries that just look like they're dark. They're not active at all. And then I watch stem cell energy regenerate a new ovary. And then I watch an ovary transplant in my mind's eye during the healing, where all the connector tubes and everything get clamped off. and then the old ovary gets removed and the new ovary gets put in place, and then all the plumbing gets hooked back up, which is interesting. And I've had moms say, well, are those my eggs? And I say, of course, they're your eggs. They're just, they're a mirror of what your ovary looked like. It's just a new ovary with all of the same energy and all the same DNA and everything. It's just a new bunch of eggs in a new ovary. It's fascinating to watch.
Wow, amazing.
From an energetic standpoint. And then I can watch going down the tubes and clearing them out. I worked with a woman this morning who I watched that procedure happen in a healing, and I watched an energetic D&C happen in her uterus to get the uterine lining scraped out. And once it was scraped out, you do. And then I found scar tissue, and I said, have you ever had a procedure? Because you've got scar tissue in your uterus. And she said, yeah, I did. I had some polyps removed so I could see the scar tissue with that. How do you do it with herbs? How do you do a D&C with herbs?
Well, so we call it that, but it's not a full on D&C. But basically, we use herbs that move the blood, which typically we're not supposed to use during periods. But in the case of fertility, it's okay to use ones that build blood and move the blood. Move the blood is almost like, imagine blood thinners, but it's not quite as strong.
Right.
So it actually gets the uterus to shed even stronger. It pushes a little bit more. And what that does is it really cleans out.
Interesting. Does castor oil really make women go into labor?
I don't suggest it. I honestly don't know.
I've heard that. Yeah, that's kind of an old wives' tale.
But I wouldn't suggest to do it. I didn't even take it myself, and I was a week late with both, and I did not do it because I was looking at everything, but I was like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, but you've heard of that?
I have heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think is just
true or not.
It's just fish oil, isn't it? Isn't castor oil just fish oil?
It's a certain type of, it almost looks like an almond or nut. Like it's a certain type of oil. It's not fish oil. Yeah. And it has very medicinal qualities. It's great for a lot of things. I suggest a lot of times castor oil pack, but actually back to the ovaries. And I wanted to see what your thoughts on this or intuition was on this. You know, there are some theories, and it was based on some cancer medicine that was given to a woman. And they do believe that somehow it actually increased her amount of follicles, that we are not necessarily born with all the follicles we'll ever have. And that there is that possibility that we can grow them.
Mm-hmm. I get a yes on that.
I feel that too. Yeah. Because we just don't know. We haven't discovered it yet.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. Are we born with a set number of follicles? I got to know. And I'll talk to these women who've been to an IVF specialist and they say, well, you just don't have enough eggs. And then I'll look at them energetically and I'll go, yeah, you got plenty of eggs. It just takes one. The thing that was interesting that I saw this morning with this client, though, was we worked on her husband as well. And the IVF people were saying he had slow swimmers, his slow sperm. So I watched this. It looked like a chain link fence almost. It was a screen that was put inside his testicle where the sperm were. And it was like the bigger, fatter, slower sperm were in the back and the little muscular, fast swimmers were in the front because the big ones couldn't fit through this screen. I'd never seen that healing before, Michelle. And so I said, well, we've just segregated the fast swimmers from the slow swimmers. And the thought I got was of two kids racing in a swim meet at a pool, and one's heavy and not very fast. He's kind of slow. And then the other one's little and lean and was like grease lightning swimming through the water. And I thought that was fascinating that I saw that healing. It was like put right in the middle. Have you ever seen a dog kennel where they'll have that chain link fence stuff put up and they'll keep the big dogs away perhaps from the little dogs or just segregate the dogs? That's what it reminded me of. It wasn't that big of a hole. It was more like a screen on a screened-in porch that you'd see, or a window screen. But the little swimmers were in the front. And what I was getting was those little swimmers were going to go do the job, and it wasn't going to be a mix of both.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting because I would think that would be able to to up the percentage chance that one of those swimmers was going to get to the egg.
Make it.
Yeah. The little lean, fast ones were going to get there. Yeah.
That's wild. It's amazing how everybody's so different.
Yeah. Yeah. It was wild. I said, God love you. I said, I can't wait to hear how you tell your husband we were playing around with his balls here while we were doing this healing. He started laughing and she's going, I don't know that I'm going to tell him that. I said, okay, good. That's probably a good thing.
That's really funny.
This woman in Alabama I was talking to, we were playing around with your balls, but it was fun. Oh, gosh. All right. You say that you incorporate the mind and how it influences conception. Can you talk a little bit about that and explain what you mean by that statement?
So, like we were talking before, you were just saying that a woman comes in and then she goes to the doctor and the doctor says to her, oh, you don't have enough eggs, or I've seen that so many times that I can call BS on it for a lot of things because it's just not true. It really, I really believe that the mind is so powerful, and you are such a great example of it. I mean, the way you heal and the way you describe your healing is exactly how people can literally get into their body and see these little symbolic stories of what's happening. And it really is that simple. It's just kind of, coming in and seeing your ovaries get more energy or get fed to a place, or even going inside your body and feeling, where am I feeling that stagnation? Your body is always communicating with you. So our minds are like so powerful. And I feel like we have this vehicle, like really powerful vehicle that we don't really know how to drive, but we have such power and has such potential. And that's really the mind. So you can actually impact your body. I mean, one example was, the lemon example, imagining a lemon and holding it in your hand and cutting it open. And most people and then putting it in your mouth and feeling all the juices flowing. And most people will salivate the second they think about that. Why? They're not holding a lemon. Why are they salivating? Because they're thinking of a lemon and they're getting a physiological reaction. So what else could we do? Right? So it's just it's really fascinating. I mean, I know you know this because this is what you do, and you do it really with your imagination is so on point. It's so strong, but you trust it. You trust that imagination will do something, and you utilize it, and you navigate that inner world to empower and to heal. It's remarkable.
Well, thank you for that. When I first started doing this, and I thought, are just going to think I'm nuts if I tell them a body, their ovaries and their eggs look like blonde caviar, or a body part looks like a bowl of whipped cream or something like that. But I hear always from people often that they love the visualizations because it can help them visualize. And to your point, when we can visualize what it is we want to happen, the body's going to follow. I love the lemon example. I always use the example of, have you ever watched a scary movie on TV and your brain knew it was pretend, but your heart might have felt like it was getting ready to jump out of your chest at any given moment because it was just so darn scary.
Totally.
Yeah. And so that was funny. What percentage of fertility challenges are related to the woman and what percentage are related to the man? Are those statistics available?
It is, you want to say 50-50. I think it's a little different, a little bit over to the woman, I believe, but it's about 50-50. I mean, it really is a lot of times both, not both at the same time. Sometimes it is, but yeah, because even miscarriages could be the sperm's DNA. So you have to really work on both. And I think it's important for men to supplement just as much as women do. Women are the ones that'll take all the supplements, eat whatever, goes back to that whole primal thing. But men have such an important role as well. I mean, such an important role. So at the least, just take supplements. Don't put the cell phone in your front pocket. Things like that. That's like every single guy I always see, they just put it right there.
I promise you that's my next question.
Okay, there you go.
Is cell phone radiation a real problem for men?
That's because I'm an AAT graduate. I read your mind.
that must be it. We're ESPN friends,
Totally.
We're Psychic Friends Network.
Exactly.
Honest to God. My next question is cell phone radiation a real problem for men, and how can they address it without giving up their phone?
Mm-hmm.
What do you tell them?
Put it in their butt.
Put it in your back pocket and have the screen. What I've read is have the screen up next to your butt cheek. Have the back of it facing out, because that's where most of their radiation goes.
Exactly. And then sometimes, put a sticker, one of those radiation shields. One thing that also I've heard of is Shungite, it's called. Shungite is it's a type of stone. It's a black stone that is said to be absorbing of radiation. And they sell them in small, tiny little discs where you can actually stick them on. There's like a little peel. You peel it off and you stick it on. You can stick it on the back of your phone. And sometimes people, it's easier to even put it on top of the case. It's fine. It's still going to absorb what's there.
Interesting. So you think those little disc things really work?
I'd like to think, I still say do everything. Do that, put it in the back pocket. Most people don't have butt issues fat cells don't tend to have as much of a sensitivity to anything. It's more the sex organs that tend to be, if anything, the health, it can really impact the health of those, the groin, the breasts, all those areas should be totally avoided. If you have to do something, put it in your butt.
Well, that's what I say, that you're frying the family jewels when you've got it in the front pocket.
Those jewels are important.
I know it. I tell Jonathan that. I say, my babies are in there. You need to put that phone in your back pocket.
Exactly.
Well, and then I see a lot of men, especially older men, will put it in their shirt pocket right next to their heart. And I'm thinking, what are you doing?
Or breast. Men can get breast cancer too.
Yeah. Yeah. I do see that with women every now and again, but not as often as with men doing that. You had mentioned about the rear end being fat. Does fat help in the right kind of fat? Does that help increase fertility? I've read that.
Yes. So it's really good for equality as well. Fat is very necessary for hormone production in the body, and the right type of fat. It's important to have the right type of fat, but people have become afraid of fat. Part of it was that there was this research done, paid by the sugar companies a long time ago to really put the heart health blame on fat. And then people went all fat free. And then they put extra sugar to give some taste. And now they're finding it's completely not true. And fat is very healthy. It's very necessary, but it's the right type of fat. And same thing with carbs. Carbs are not a bad thing. It's just having the right type of complex carbs. You don't want anything like sugar or syrup or something that is too simple carbs.
So what's the right type of fat and what are the right type of carbs?
So fats, I tend to like fish oils, Nordic Naturals I love. So you can supplement with them. You can have sardines if you like. Some people don't like it. Wild caught salmon, avocado, hemp seeds, lots of omega-3 fatty acids are really great. We were talking about carbs as well.
Mm-hmm. What are good carbs in your world? I'm sure Twinkies aren't part of your suggested eating list.
They're good tasting, but they're not good for you. But yeah, so anything like plantains, and also at a minimum, you don't want to overdo anything, especially carbs, because they could be strong on the body, so very starchy carbs. But you can have, plantains are really great, sweet potatoes, quinoa, things that are more complex carbs that take a little longer to digest. You can also have carbs in fruits. The best kind of fruits really are the blueberries, blackberries, high antioxidant rich fruits. And they also are great for inflammation and that kind of thing. So food, it's just good to have a variety of whole foods that are grown from the ground. Mm-hmm. That's the best.
I eat blueberries most nights for dinner because, as you know, I gave up sugar a couple of years ago. So I still want it, but I don't eat it. So I eat wild
But that's
blueberries.
a great way to have it. You can have it, you can enjoy it, and it's good for your body.
It is. And then I have to bleach my teeth every once in a while because it's like my teeth. Well, I look like a Smurf.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I look like a Smurf because I have blue teeth with that. Oh gosh. Speaking of teeth, I've read recently that teeth and gum health have a correlation not only with our health in general, but also with fertility.
Yep.
Have you found that in your meridians that when you're working on somebody that can come up?
So the people that have come in, most of the time they've taken care of dental work. Every once in a while, I have people that have really major issues and they are struggling with fertility, at the same time. And what's interesting is in Chinese medicine, the kidneys are really in charge of reproductive health. They are responsible for when a woman gets puberty and a man gets puberty, like when a woman starts her cycle, and their what do you want to, not organ or element, but they basically teeth are connected to the kidneys. So if you have good teeth, it's usually because your parents gave you good pre-heaven kidney qi. And you have really good teeth. And as we get older, our kidney qi declines. And that's why older people lose their teeth.
Huh. What do the kidneys have to do with fertility other than they filter out toxins? Is that the main thing?
No, the kidneys are considered, it's different. It's not Western medicine kidneys. It's completely looked at differently. The kidneys are in charge. They basically hold the yin and the yang. So they do have water as part of their element, but they also have fire. If you have too little fire, the water will accumulate. You have edema. And then if you have too hot fire, there's not enough water, you get too dry. You need really this perfect balance where you have the water and the heat will create steam with the water, just the right amount. So they're kind of the yin and the yang in the kidneys harmonize.
Right. So I'm hearing you talk about water and fire and all that, and I'm thinking of feng shui, which is obviously
very,
Eastern.
very similar.
And I have a feng shui gal that I've used for years, and I can watch energy patterns in my house. And when they get out of whack, I'm on the phone with Mary, the feng shui lady, and I'm going, Mary, what's up?
Yeah.
And she'll say, okay, do this, do that. And then I can scan the house and I can see that the energy has corrected itself. It's fascinating. And that stuff's ancient as well. That's thousands of years old as well.
Yeah, it's basically, it's kind of Chinese medicine on the environment.
Right. Which is interesting for you as a former architect to see that, because I know my feng shui gal has clients that when they're designing a building, feng shui is every bit a part of the design as the engineering and the architecture and all of that, and what direction the building faces and where it's located and all that kind of stuff is fascinating as well. I could talk to you for hours about this stuff. It's fascinating. And obviously you're brilliant and you're so dedicated. I know how dedicated you are to your clients and your patients. And I know how much comfort they get along with their fertility journey. And I know you have a huge success rate of helping clients. So do clients have to come to Miami to find you, or can they work with you virtually? How do you have that set up?
No, I do virtual consults. I do virtual programs. I do self-study courses. So it doesn't have to be in person. Okay.
And how can people find you?
So the easiest way is to go to my website, which is www.michelleoravitz.com. And then from there, you can connect to my clinic and just everything, all the different programs.
Spell Oravitz.
ORAV as in Victor, ITZ.
Okay, michelleoravitz.com. All right. She's a goddess, you guys. Any of you that are wanting to have some help with your fertility journey, even if you haven't had any problems, I would think it would make sense to talk to you even as somebody is preparing to conceive, even before they try. and just so that they can have everything lined up and it'll be smooth sailing, hopefully, for them. What I'm seeing, and maybe it's just the clients that come to me that are trying to conceive, they're older. Is there a skew where women are older now? Delivering women, has the age gone up over what it was certainly 20 years ago? It seems like it has to me, just of the people that I know.
I think a lot of times people, decide to put off having children, or they get married later. But a lot of times now with women, careers have kind of taken the forefront. So what I always suggest is, if that's the case, no problem, but freeze your eggs. And I've helped women do that as well. Single women that just want to prepare their bodies and just want to freeze their eggs and have that option.
That's a great idea. I actually was on a show about that, to freeze or not to freeze. It was a summit earlier in the year. And what is an optimal age to do that if a woman is focusing on her career or she hasn't met the man of her dreams yet? What is there an age range where you would suggest that? And can we talk about that just for a minute, since you brought it up?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, like I was even having the conversation with my husband. I'm like, listen, if our kids get to 32, 33, I think it's a perfect age, because around that time, your egg quality is still good. You want to, for the most part, everybody's different, but you can also, again, you can increase it with the right choices that you can make, supplements, and you could definitely help improve it and optimize. And around that age is great because it'll last about 10 years. Obviously the cycle of freezing is not too long, and you're not going to probably, most likely, unless you're trying later on, most people are going to want around 40, 41, 42, 43, at that point, you'll find a person that you're going to marry, or you're going to decide to just do it on your own.
Yeah. And you find a sperm donor.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
you do that.
And then they fertilize the eggs with a sperm donor.
This morning with whom I was working, she said, it's just not fair, because the sperm donors, I think you pay $200 for a sperm donor, and you pay $25,000 for an egg donor. And I said, well, it's a lot harder to get the eggs out than it is the sperm. So
yeah, they have to go under. I mean, it's a whole process.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So around from 30 to 32 is what I heard is a good range.
I would say 30, 32, 33. Okay. That's if you really want like two numbers. But yeah, it could be anywhere from 30 to 34 really is a bigger range. Okay.
Perfect. All right. Okay. We're going to need to go, because I'm going to come up with other questions, and we're going to be here another hour. So MichelleOravitz.com. Everything's there. Anybody that's looking to conceive or knows somebody that is, go to Michelle's website. It will lead you to all kinds of different tools and different things that can help you, and schedule an appointment with Michelle so that she can help you too, because her success rate is phenomenal, you guys. I know about it. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us this week. And I love and adore you, and sending you big hugs and kisses from Sweet Home, Alabama, and from Miami too. Michelle's in Miami. And next week, we'll be back with a live show. So take care, everybody. Enjoy your weekend and your week. Bye now.
Be sure to follow Julie on Instagram and YouTube at Ask Julie Ryan, and like her on Facebook at Ask Julie Ryan. To schedule an appointment or submit a question, please visit AskJulieRyan.com.
This show is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be medical, psychological, financial, or legal advice. Please contact a licensed professional. The Ask Julie Ryan Show, Julie Ryan and all parties involved in producing, recording, and distributing it assume no responsibility for listeners' actions based on any information heard on this or any Ask Julie Ryan shows or podcasts.